Welcome to Game Retail Ramblings. This is episode number 26. I'm your host, Travis Severance, coming to you live from Millennium Game Studios in Rochester, New York. Today we're going to talk about accessories and supplements. I know it's been like a week or 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks. I don't know, maybe a month. I appreciate everybody tuning back in. I was moonlighting at the other store that I'm responsible for now, the folks over at Game Center in Roseville, Minnesota. We had a massive sale this weekend that went really well, and my staff's sort of kicking ass over there, so that's good. But today the focus is going to be on accessories, which is why I've got kind of accessories all over the place behind me in the background there. And we'll talk about supplements too. Why do they matter? What's important for them? What are the benefits? Why are we carrying anything other than games, basically? So when people think about game stores, they typically focus on board games or the card games themselves. They think role-playing games and miniature games for some stores that are just specifically focused on that sort of game in and of itself. I don't know very many stores, or I haven't been to very many stores where they don't have some level of accessory, whether it's maybe just some paints and some glue for a miniatures focused store. Even the GW specific stores have paints and glue and that sort of thing. Most card stores have sleeves, they have deck boxes, they have binders, that sort of thing. So accessories and supplements are, to my estimation, based on what percentage of our sales. If I take a look at most stores that I go into and most stores that I look around at, accessories are easy to fit a lot of them in a really small space. So you can go really dense because they tend to be thin and not real bulky. Not to say that some of the deck boxes and some of the binders and things like that can't be more, and a paint rack takes up a good amount of space. But if you really look at the amount of revenue per square inch you can get into accessories and that sort of thing, it's pretty high compared to a giant amount of board games on a shelf and things like that. Sometimes you don't get the same amount of revenue equity out of that space per inch, basically. So I'm going to break down, you can strategically boost your bottom line by using accessories and using supplements to sort of do that thing. But first, I feel like I need to define that. A lot of people talk about accessories and they talk about supplements and they sort of commingle them, and they're not necessarily the exact same thing. They're a little bit different. Accessories are items that complement main products like deck boxes, dice, card sleeves, storage solutions, play mats, that sort of thing. And supplements themselves are expansions or add-ons that come with core games. So it's not necessarily the core game itself. Sometimes it's, in the case of Pathfinder, it's maybe an adventure path, or it's a new campaign setting or that sort of thing. It's not the exact game itself. It's Ticket to Ride in Paris as opposed to just regular Ticket to Ride. Why do they matter? For game stores, accessories and supplements serve basically three primary roles. First, they're going to increase your average transaction value. So whatever the person's bringing up to the register itself, by itself as a core fundamental purchase, whatever it is, an accessory can boost whatever your average ticket is. I think our average ticket right now is around $32, give or take. Before we moved to this location, it was around $24. So we've had an average ticket boost of around $8 per transaction, which is significant when you look at it from a percentage model. A lot of that has to do with better merchandising and more accessories, and a lot of it has to do with just we're better suited here at our point of purchase than we were at the old location. We were kind of limited by space. We have more space, and what happened at the old location is the old location had a very flat frontage on our register area. This one is a little bit more, it has more of a slat wall facing to it, so I can hang stuff from it, and it's subdued a little bit too, so it doesn't stick out or jab people as they come to their counter. There's about 4 inches of space there, so we can fit all kinds of things like minifigures and small versions of card games, and you can fit sleeves and other stuff like that. And we have sort of an aisle or a row of accessories that are set up as part of our cash wrap that's similar to like if you've gone to like a Home Goods or a TJ Maxx, where they sort of have that line of like Toblerone, and there's some, weird, the hook hangy things and different things like that. We sort of have that set up here too. So there's some little plush figures, but we've also got Pringles, and we've got soap and all kinds of weird stuff that sort of brings you through that shopping experience before you get to the register. The second reason to carry them that's important is it allows for a little bit of customer loyalty, in that they shop here because we have good accessories, and those accessories end up making the rest of their stuff look a little bit better than what they normally have. So a standard deck box versus a higher end deck box or an extremely high end deck box, we typically try to stock it at 3 different price points, so to speak. So we have sort of a value option, which is something that will get you through, get you in the door if you're kind of new to the hobby and you don't know how much you want to spend. there's a value pricing model that we have for most of our accessories that's just easy. It'll do the trick, but it's not necessarily long lasting or something that's like amazing or gorgeous or beautiful. It will work to help you shuffle your cards, but it's something that you're probably going to have to replace quicker than maybe option B or C. And then we have a mid-tier option, which is sort of an option that your day-to-day player is going to be able to use. And there's a high-end option as well that's like a little bit more exotic. And that's, you know, when we get into our outer sleeves with our inner sleeves, with our inner sleeve with an outer sleeve and an outer sleeve with an inner sleeve, like when you get done, you've got a 40 card deck and it's 1.5 feet high, and that's what it takes to shuffle. And there's hard sleeves on the outside of it. Not quite that extreme, but we do sell that if you want it. The third is to really help the consumer with their experience. So if somebody comes up to the register and they buy a set of 40K models, and we don't offer to sell them some glue, and they get home and they have to put the thing together and there's no glue that's associated with the purchase, they're going to be annoyed because they're going to have to either go back out and grab some glue or something like that. So a lot of times we're offering accessories to people so that specifically when they get home, they can build their thing or they can have the best experience they possibly can have with the product. A lot of times people that are new to board gaming don't even think about, oh, I just bought this deck builder and I'm going to shuffle this thing 30 or 40 times. The cards are going to get beat up. Maybe I should put some sleeves on it. And it's not necessarily that consumer's fault because they're probably not card players. They're just used to playing a card game and they never thought to themselves, hey, I should put these sleeves on these things because, you know, nobody that's playing pinochle or poker or anything. I've never played with a sleeved poker deck in my entire life. So why would they think ever that they would need to put some card sleeves on there? But then you explain to them the value of having card sleeves on it, how it can make your product last a little bit longer and so on and so forth. And then they start to get it. So that helps build up some expert equity with them as well. This year we're at right around almost 700K in accessories this year so far. That's a lot. That's about 18K a week, roughly. So it's a large part of what we do. Part of it is the things that I mentioned before, and some of it's just going to be based on some of these topics that I decided to talk about moving forward. So we're going to go through the benefits of stocking accessories. And number one is increasing the average transaction value, like I said. You get accessories in, it's going to increase your average ticket by and large. The other thing is it's really good. The second reason is they make great impulse purchases too. We have a ton of different products that are out there that are not mainline products that are specifically built to enhance or extend gameplay, that sort of thing. We have a lot of people that come in for lunchtime and they're sort of grazing. They're not really looking to spend 50 or 60 bucks on a role-playing game necessarily, but they're going to take a look at what we have for dice or dice bags, or maybe they're going to buy an unpainted WizKids figure or something like that. They're just in here wandering around because they're out of their cubicle, they're out of their day job. They just want to relax and decompress a little bit while they have time to do their lunch. So these smaller micro purchases are something that they can end up going over to the shelf and they just buy it and they put it in the car and then they bring it home, and then they may stop back in to make a bigger purchase, but it's something that's super quick and super easy. The other thing is a lot of times kids as well, if they're in with their parents and stuff, an accessory purchase is a smaller value purchase for them, and it's something that they can handle because parents are in here all the time saying you can pick out anything you like for under $5, which is crazy because we have a ton of things that are under $5, so sometimes that process can take them a little bit longer. It also helps with customer loyalty and the experience because they can personalize their own thing. You know, we give people a whole ton of different options as far as sleeves go and deck boxes and binders and that sort of thing. And the reason why we don't just carry all black or just black and white is because we want people to be able to personalize their collection the way that they want to. You know, some people like to have a binder for every color for Magic. We make sure that we've got all the primary colors in. Some people want orange because they've got a particular faction that they like in another game where they want to use an orange binder for it. So we try to go as wide as we possibly can with the selection for a couple of different reasons. Number one, we want people to be able to buy the stuff that they want to buy, that they enjoy, and their favorite colors and that sort of thing. And then number two is it adds some variety to our community in terms of everybody doesn't want to have the same exact binder as everybody else. Like they want to have other things, which is why we sell stickers and that sort of thing so they can accessorize their accessories if they want to. And the other thing too is number four for benefit for stocking accessories is it's sort of e-commerce proof. And what I mean by that is it's not that accessories, it's not that boxes, it's not the sleeves, it's not that glue and that sort of stuff is never purchased online. It certainly is, but it's also one of those things where because just due to the nature of the cost of it, a lot of times the savings isn't so massive that somebody like really needs to make sure that they buy all their stuff online, right? So the 20 or 30% off that they're getting on sleeves or they're getting on dice or whatever, it's a couple of bucks, and being able to buy it now as opposed to having to wait for a day or two or however long it's going to take for Amazon or whatever place you're going to order it from get it to your house, like just being able to have it in hand and be able to work with it is a nice value for the customer as well. Expansions and supplements as revenue drivers. Number one is capitalizing on expansion. So you have core set product that comes in. Your core set does very well. This is a little bit different, a little trickier now, because a lot of our stuff that we get through Kickstarter is like the core set, and then it's like 14 months worth of expansions on a traditional release. We don't get to do this as often with a Kickstarter launch as what we do with, maybe our traditional releases, like something like Dominion. Like I can count on Dominion for a set or two every year that expansion comes out. There's some percentage of my customers that are going to buy that expansion because they have all the other ones, and then there's some amount of customers that are going to see the expansion on my new release section and they're going to say, what's that? And then they're going to go back and they're going to buy the core. Now, does that mean that they're going to buy, Alchemy through Allies? Not necessarily, but those two products I know are definitely going to get some run during that period of time. The newest expansion and then the core set usually typically does pretty well. Use the expansions, use that sort of stuff when we're talking about board games and card games and that sort of thing to be able to buoy up maybe some of your core set stuff. I know we've had a bunch of things lately that have converted over from Kickstarter to traditional distribution. Well, during the course of us selling through our Kickstarter version of whatever the game is, we sold all the core sets, but we're stuck with like 5 or 6 or 7 different expansions, or there's a number of those different expansions. Well, now that traditional distribution is getting some of the core sets in, we're buying more of the core sets. Of course, we're out of them, so we would buy them anyway, but we're buying them to help shore up and be able to reset up a display with the expansion products that makes sense. Like right now, the expansion products are just hanging out, and I've said it on a couple of different episodes. Typically, the stuff that we find in my 40% off or my 70% off section or my overage section, it typically is expansion product. It's not usually core product. Usually we do really well in core product, and then expansion sales just end up drying up because either the line gets too long, there's too many expansions, or the expansions in the middle sort of get lost in translation, or it also can create a little bit of paralysis from the customer coming in. If you don't have somebody dedicated to be able to tell them the reason why they might want Ticket to Ride Europe over Ticket to Ride North America, then you're probably not going to get as many sales there. And they might look at the line and go, oh my gosh, I got to be able to get into this whole thing, or else I'm not going to have that fun of an experience and stuff. So we sort of we highlight core sets. We make sure the core sets are always front face. And if we're going to side face anything, it's always the expansions. And we sort of try to display them in a buying order as well. So that works out pretty well. The other thing that happens is, you can keep your customers engaged with new content. Pathfinder just did a big switch over recently. They have a new batch of adventure paths that are coming out. We've decided to lean into that, and we're running Pathfinder Society for the first time ever in the store, which is amazing considering how many Pathfinder books we've sold. But Paizo's done a really good job of making their organized play program more retail friendly than it was previously. So we're going to give them a whirl this time, and we have somebody that's enthusiastic that wants to run it. So part of that is the expansion products that Pathfinder have are pretty significant. So if we run Pathfinder Society and we have more Pathfinder players playing in here, things like the brand new spell cards that are coming out in a couple of weeks, the new adventure pass, the new character add-ons, the different things that DMs have to use for themselves, whether it's the maps or the adventure packs or whatever it is that they happen to have, all of that stuff sort of comes hand in hand. Now, if I don't have some level of that on the floor, then I'm never going to be able to sell it. But again, to go back to what I said previously, you want to keep that stuff gardened. If you can turn around sometimes and you can look, and it's like 80% of your sales in the line comes from just your core product. And then you've got hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars invested into all this expansion product. And when you take a look at what the expansion product looks like, it does garbage for turns. So it's like, well, why are you carrying all that stuff? So you have to kind of go through that stuff and trim it out and clear it out. And the other thing too is I wouldn't not bring in new expansions because you have old expansions that haven't sold. And the reason for that is the newest stuff is top of mind. The newest stuff is getting the most publicity, the most marketing and things like that. I'd almost carry and pare down the inner expansions more than I would the exterior ones. So your core product and the newest expansions are probably the most critical, have the highest chance for sales based on sort of the way the velocity of this industry works. It's the same thing. What I had to learn when I started carrying manga was carry the first 3 books and the 2 most recent books, because it gives me the opportunity to service the widest amount of customers. And the widest amount of customers are both the customer that wants to try the thing out because it's cool and different and they've never bought any of it, And the customer that's already inundated and they're familiar with it and they're on board with whatever the manga is, they're going to want the most recent manga. They don't care about 4 through 16. They want 17 or 18 or 19. So if you look at our manga shelves, it's like 1 through 4. And then a lot of times it's like 19, 20, and 21. And then if I sell 4, then I'll order 5. If I sell 5, then I'll order 6. Or typically with my manga, I actually go a little further than that. If I sell 4, I'll order 5, 6, and 7. Most manga are sold in 3s when they do the compilation set, so that's the way that they end up doing that thing. But the same sort of thing happens, and my good friend Paul Butler gave seminars for years on role-playing games, and how a lot of times when people get into role-playing games, they make the mistake of thinking that, I'm going to bring in Call of Cthulhu. Well, there's Call of Cthulhu and then there's 45 books. I have to bring them all in. And you don't really. You can bring in the investigator book. You can bring in the starter product. You can bring in the Dungeon Master's Guide for that sort of thing. And then maybe you just bring the most recent adventure in. And then if those things sell, then the next time grab one additional adventure. One thing that's, talk to your distributors about which one sells the most, or talk to Chaosium themselves about which one sells the most. And, maybe they'll say King in Yellow, or maybe they'll say, it's Arkham, that sort of thing. So you can sort of toe dip your way through it with accessories and make it not as big of an issue as it feels like it is because of how wide the thing is. Miniatures are sort of the same way. I think a lot of times people get lost in the size and the scale of miniatures, that you have to carry absolutely everything in the line. I just got into the store in Roseville runs Conquest Miniatures, which is not a miniature system I'm familiar with at all, made by Parabellum. So I've spent the last 4 or 5 days learning that entire line, which takes a bunch of time and trims things down and so on and so forth. Well, what I found is we sell a whole ton of starter products, but we don't sell a lot of products in the middle of that. And part of the reason why I think we don't sell the products in the middle of that is a bunch of those units are already in the starter set. Well, if you're telling everybody to go to the starter set, then they don't necessarily need those units unless they want multiples of those. And a lot of times it's not the sort of game where you're going to have multiples of the same units. So what I did was, when I trimmed the line down, I carried those core products and I actually discounted all the stuff that comes inside of that box, because it's a better buying deal to do that. And the likelihood of a customer coming back and saying they want another unit of that for that particular game is low. So you can look at your expansions sort of the same way. Let's talk about strategies for effectively merchandising accessories and supplements. So this is sort of what I talked about in the beginning. Proper placement is really critical. Make your accessories as close to without being stupid about placement when it comes to that sort of stuff. So if you've got a bunch of big stuff that you're selling and it's on the other side of the store, it's in a way where you don't have good visibility or whatever, and you put a bunch of small stuff there, that's an easy way for you to deal with theft. Putting your dice on the other side of the store so that it's next to your role-playing games and it's easy to pocket and it's easy to put in a book bag and that sort of thing is probably not the best idea. So do yourself a favor, make them close in proximity, but also make sure that you're being conscious about loss and that sort of thing. The easier it is for a shopper to go through and buy that thing, the better off it's going to be. So you don't want them on polar opposite ends of the store unless specifically, security says you should do that. Typically, it's better if they sort of work together. So if you look at the way that our store is set up, I have the books near the miniatures, near the paint, and it's sort of just one little loop that you're going to do to be able to get all of those things, because you're going to buy and buy and buy and buy, and then out the door you go. The other thing when you talk about merchandising and that sort of stuff is bundling products together. So a lot of times if we're running a Pokemon trade day, or we're doing something like one of our Beyblade events or those sort of things, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to expect that there's going to be some new people that are coming in to sort of check these things out. So we try to have 3 different bundles available, which is like a starter product, some boosters, and maybe some accessories all piled together at a discounted price, and maybe around 20%, something that's a saving. So if we get them in the door and we show them the product and they enjoy it, we want to give them sort of this easy onboarding thing, because it's real easy for you, depending on the size of the line and stuff like that, for the consumer to get really lost. Like, oh, there's so many options, I don't know how to pick. What would you do? So we just pre-make those bundles ahead of time. If you have e-commerce, a lot of times your e-commerce platform will do that for you as well. So you can take a look on those things and see what your opportunities are. But bundling products together that are similar, whether it's, something like the new player's handbook. If they buy the new player's handbook, then maybe you got a set of dice that they get for a discount off, that sort of thing. So take a look at what's available and what you have for products that you want to feature. And if there's some way to get an accessory add-on at a little bit of a cost break or something like that, even if it's 10%, it's fine. The likelihood of you selling that thing is going to double. if you have some sort of a reason why they have to take a look at, oh, Chessex dice are all 10% off if I buy this player's handbook. That's great, because I'm going to need a set of dice because I'm playing this thing for the first time. And a lot of times when it comes to accessories too, the MSRP is not as hard and fast as it is on a typical board game or a miniatures game or that sort of thing. So you've got a little bit of elasticity there. You know, a friend of mine priced every single set of Chessex dice at the top end of the dice pricing for Chessex, because Chessex used to, and I'm sure they probably still do, have variable different pricing. Well, you know, at the time it was $4.95 up to $9.99. Well, they just priced every single set of dice at $9.99. Now, did they sell less of those $4.99 dice than I did? Maybe. But if everything's $9.99 and they know that the dice sets are going to cost them $10, they make a couple of extra points on the red and black one than what they would normally do. Nobody cares. The people buying the dice don't care, and you make a couple of extra bucks. So if you build some sort of bundled savings into that on the back end, you can get yourself in good shape. The other thing is seasonal and event-based promotions. So sort of like what I was talking about there, you know, we've got autumn's coming up, and a lot of times we talk about Halloween being a big thing for our customer base and that sort of stuff. I know we've got our board game day is going to be holiday themed and that sort of thing. What most retailers don't understand, and if you walk into a grocery store, you'll understand, because the grocery stores start putting out Halloween decorations, it feels like at 4th of July. So they're like way ahead of it. A lot of times game store retail is way behind it, and we think that it's going to be more than what it is, and then it ends up not being it. So we kind of started our holiday displays already to sort of take a look at making sure that people realize, you know, Halloween is on the way. We've got all kinds of horror stuff and zombies and trade paperbacks and that sort of thing. And my team always does a really, really good job of setting that up. So make sure that you highlight accessories during that time as well. Like, you know, a lot of the dice manufacturers will have specific dice that have skulls inside of them or that sort of thing. Or there's a cute pumpkin thing or that thing. A lot of our candy now has sort of a Halloween theme to it as well. Accessories are really important to what we do. It provides us a nice batch of money that's available that we wouldn't normally have if we didn't have that. We can do a lot of accessories in a really, really tight space. So if you have a smaller store and that sort of thing, maybe you can't lean into having 5 paint lines, but you do 2 paint lines really, really well. You know, and I think if I had a smaller space, I would still try to lean into 3 different price points where I could. I would just probably turn the uniqueness of my sleeves, I would change up quite a bit, because I'd want it to be kind of fresh every single time somebody came to visit. The important thing to do is, if you're listening to what I'm saying, and this sort of goes for every single one of the episodes, like, take the stuff that you're going to get that you find valuable and make sure that you're bringing it back to your shop and you're actually putting into action and seeing how it works. Like, it's great if you're liking and commenting and viewing my stuff and you're having a good time with it, but at the end of the day, if you're not using this information, you're not using this knowledge, you're not going it back home and you're not putting it into action, you're shortchanging yourself the 30 minutes that you listen to me drone on about whatever I'm doing here. So please, you know, try some of those things out, whether it's the bundling or you do something that's seasonal or that sort of thing. The holidays are obviously fast approaching all of us, so it's super critical there. The other thing that I talked about is we're looking at starting another show. And by we're, I mean me and my producers here in the room. So a little teaser, in 2 weeks, we're going to do the first episode of a show that's called Behind the Counter. And Behind the Counter is going to be a show that's 30 minutes, just like this one, except I'm going to be interviewing all kinds of different people for this show. It could be publishers, it could be distributors, it could be retailers, and just going through a general interview process. So 30 minutes to talk about whatever it is about their business that's unique or cool or different, and so you get to know them a little bit better. They get a little bit of time to talk and that sort of thing. So that's my new, you know, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to go every other with Game Retail Ramblings and every other with Behind the Counter, and it should work really well. So next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about setting up a game trade-in or buyback program for the episode. So if anybody's unfamiliar with the used program that we have or how we handle singles or how we manage that things, I know there's a lot of people out there that do it a lot of different ways than what we do. So next week's episode should be same bat time, same bat channel, just 1 week from now. So fast forward to the 25th. We'll be here at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then I will talk about my first guest for the following week. So thanks everybody for stopping by, and happy gaming.